Here today to talk to you about kids supplementation, our kids formulation. We get a lot of questions about it. One of the big questions we get is, why don't I just buy this really cheap little gummy that my kid likes to eat for $5? Why do we have to get this elaborate and expensive supplement? Well, let's talk about that. Okay, so first we need to talk about what actually is happening when a kid is going to sleep, what sleep does, and why we might need to supplement. Okay, so first of all, remember that evolutionarily we use the sun as our cue as to when to go to sleep and when to be awake. The way that works is the sun shines in our eyes, the sunlight shines in our eyes, it carries blue light. We have some nerve cells in our eyes that sense blue light, have nothing to do whatsoever with vision. They're just sensing blue light for this alignment. Once the blue light goes away, i.e. the sun goes down a couple of hundred years ago when there's no electricity, the sun went down, there was no more light. That fired a pathway back through our brain, this really circuitous pathway, and it fires something called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, and that's like the coordination effort. That fires down a pathway to something called the pineal gland. It secretes the hormone that you all know of, that's very popular, it's been around for a long time. Everyone knows of melatonin. And everybody thinks melatonin makes you sleep. Well, melatonin does not make you sleep. What melatonin does is it initiates the cascades of events that lead to you falling asleep. And there are literally hundreds of these things going on. So if you've ever heard Matt or listened to or read Matt Walker's book, he calls it the starter pistol of the sleep process, which I love that metaphor. It's just initiating everything. There are hundreds of things that have to change for your kid's brain to be in a real sleep position to get the benefit of sleep. And what are those benefits? Well, those benefits are everything that you can think of. So everything that happens that improves your kid during the day, your kid is breaking him or herself down. They're getting tired, they're using up their muscles, they're using up their energy stores, and they're cramming a bunch of information in the brain. Some of it's useless, some of it's important stuff. When they sleep is when all of that gets organized. So what they've learned during the day gets organized, any emotional events get organized, anything they've done to exercise their bodies. If they've strained their bodies, it repairs stronger so that they'll grow back stronger tomorrow. Of course, if they're young kids, they're still physically growing, their bones are getting longer, their muscles are getting bigger, all of that type of stuff. But the most important part of our brain is the prefrontal cortex. It's the area behind my forehead here and from my temples forward above my eyes. So that little area right there, that's the part that makes us the smartest animal on the planet. And what it allows us to do is what we call executive functions, like solving math problems, like reading, like planning and scheduling, like problem solving and making decisions between what's a good idea and what's a bad idea. So when your kid looks over a balcony and says, I really want to jump, that seems exciting, is that too far? And they make a decision whether jumping is a good idea or a bad idea. That's coming from the prefrontal cortex. And guess what area of your brain is the most impacted by poor sleep, or not enough sleep, inadequate sleep? The prefrontal cortex. So you want that region going. That's the region of the brain that they're using in school. For them to learn, their executive functioning has to be working well. The better their executive functioning is working, the better they'll be able to learn. The faster they'll be able to learn, the more completely they'll be able to learn. So it's really important, obviously, for kids. It's really important for adults as well. But the prefrontal cortex, that region that makes us the smartest animal on the planet, that's not fully developed in males until about 25 years old. A couple of years sooner than that when you're female. So it'll be like 22 years old maybe. And when you think about the importance of that, if this is the simulator, this is the thing that I'm using to figure out what I'm going to do, what decisions I'm going to make, what I'm going to go after, what I'm going to pursue, what my goals are, make sense out of things that are happening to me. All of that's happening in the prefrontal cortex. It's a really important part of your brain. So why would you mess with the development of that, right? So that's the most important part of who you're going to be once you're an adult. So It's an area of the brain that you don't want to muck around with, and so if you're impacting that by not getting enough sleep, you could literally be changing who your child is going to grow up to be as an adult. So the melatonin is the starter pistol, like we said, that causes a cascade of events to change a lot of things in the brain. Hundreds of things change. And your brain only secretes a tiny little bit of melatonin, a very, 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 very small amount, and then it secretes it all night long. And from the time the sun goes down until the time the sun comes up in the morning, or you wake up in the morning, your brain is only going to secrete about 6 micrograms, which is 0.6 milligrams, only about 6 micrograms over the entire nighttime. So if you give your kid a 5 milligram gummy and they chew it up and they get 5 milligrams all at once, what can possibly happen, and what we know does happen, is something called tachyphylaxis. So what that means is that melatonin is a hormone, and the hormones have receptors, and so there's a receptor on the cell membrane, and it grabs the hormone and it pulls it into the cell, and then it does its job. So melatonin is initiating it. All of the cells that in your brain that are leading to sleep, they need to have melatonin sensitivity because they need to pull melatonin in to start their cascade of changes that's going to lead to a good night's sleep. So if you have a ton of melatonin around, your body is a very smart machine. If you have 5 milligrams around and you only need 0.6 milligrams over a 12-hour period, and you have 5 milligrams all at once, you're looking at, 60, 80, 60 to 90, 120 times probably what you actually need in your brain at that time. And you can downregulate these receptors. If there's so much around that your cells aren't worried about getting it, they're not going to make as many receptors. It's a smart, efficient machine. It's like, well, there's 120 times the amount of melatonin we need. We only need 1/120th of the receptors now. Now you take away that gummy and they have a decreased amount of receptors, they essentially have a melatonin deficiency. And now they're essentially dependent upon this. And we also don't know what's going to happen with 5 milligrams. Is it overstimulating cells? Is it changing the physiology of their sleep? It's not a great idea. The best thing that you can do for your child is to give them a really good nighttime routine where you're decreasing the blue light, you're decreasing the stimulation, you're decreasing their body temperature, you're giving them an hour, hour and a half to get ready to go to sleep, and you're putting them in a cool, dark environment where they feel safe, obviously, and you're allowing them to get 9 to 12 hours of sleep, depending on how old they are. So you don't want to overdo it. Taking way too much of any hormone leads to a downregulation or decrease of the receptors that are important for that. Now you're dependent upon that, what we call exogenous, taking from the outside and putting it in. Exogenous hormones, you're dependent upon that because you need so much because you have so few receptors now. So you're creating a dependency, and you're possibly creating some unnatural physiologic environment when you have so much of a hormone around when your brain would never actually produce that much ordinarily. So what's in our product is all of the constituent ingredients that you need to make your own melatonin, and a very, very, very tiny amount of melatonin, enough just to get it started. A neuropeptide called GABA, which is actually quieting down the brain and relaxing the brain, making them not pay attention to their environment as much, and a little bit of something called phosphatidylserine, which is decreasing their stress hormones. All of those are actually completely normal things that are going to happen when they're getting ready to go to sleep anyways, and we're just bringing all of the lumber to the construction site. The construction crew, being the mechanism of their brain, they still have to do all of the work. We're just bringing it all, super concentrating it, saying here, it's all here for you to use to get yourself ready to go to sleep. There are deficiencies that are common in all Americans and all sort of westernized people. And it has to do with all sorts of things, but I won't get into the causes for that right now. But that is that's the defense of that's my case against the $5 gummy. It's usually way too much melatonin. It's way too much too soon. Again, if you think about it, 0.6 milligrams over 12 hours would be 0.05 milligrams every hour, essentially, for 12 hours. So you can look at even 1 milligram would be 20 times what you need. 5 milligrams would be, 5 times that, 100 times what you need. So I hope that clears things up for you. Even if you still think that our product is not the right fit for you, I would encourage you to use the very tiniest minimum effective dose that you can for the melatonin. It's good for them getting a good night's sleep. It's good for their overall development. It's good for their emotions, for their cognitions, for their coordination, for their growth, for everything that you want your kid to be good at is going to happen while they're sleeping. Everything that's going to make them happy and successful and productive is happening while they're sleeping. Giving them the gift of sleep is the most important thing that you can do. It's way more important than giving them the toy that they want or the iPad or anything like that. In my opinion, these are my opinion, not telling you how to parent. Hopefully that clears it up, and I'll come back at you soon with some other information. Thanks.